Diego Pavia could be the key piece to Vandy's resurrection in 2024.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate GM. Ultimate College Football Head Coach is a brand new mobile game that is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline. Use the promo code LOCKEDON CFB, all caps, inside the game store and receive a free boost to your program. Begin your coaching legacy today. Well, Vandy wraps up fall camp, and we learned quite a few things. One thing that we learned was that this defense will be very disruptive and look to wreak havoc. This offense will lean on ball control and run game as they develop the passing game. And there's an interesting development for the backup quarterback role, but with Diego Pavia as quarterback one now, he could be the key piece for Vandy's resurrection in 2024. So Pavia outright won the job. Okay. And I don't think anybody was surprised by this, but he, I think, is going to be the key piece to a much, much improved season from Vanderbilt. I think the dynamic that he brings, and yes, there's a little bit of a concern that his downfield passing ability is not there. It's not great. But I think the overall leadership, I think as they develop chemistry with the wide receivers, I think as they get their offensive line settled, which I think they pretty much do, that you're going to see this offense, and it might even be pretty sudden. I don't know that it'll be week one, but it'll kind of happen. It'll kind of jolt, and you'll be like, oh, well, this offense is way better. And a lot of that's going to be due to the leadership and the intangible qualities that Diego Pavia brings to the table. He was if you saw the on X, if you saw the captain's picture, he was front and center. He was holding the football. He was voted as one of the team captains. So the team believes in him. And him being a key piece in this whole thing is going to be great. He's, as the pass game, like I said, as the pass game develops, as he gets more comfortable being in Nashville, I think playing his first game against a quality opponent will kind of get him going a little bit. And I think he's somebody that he's frustrating to read about because in practice, he's one of those players that he's kind of a gunslinger. He makes a lot of mistakes. He takes a lot of risk, things like that. But it just seems that when the game turns on, he just clicks. And he's what you would call a gamer. And being that is very, very important because, once, when things are flying left and right, Virginia Tech's coming fast and furious, they return 20 starters. And this is going to be a tough matchup. You've got to have somebody back there that's calm, that can reassure you, and that can get this offense going. And the leadership qualities that he presents are outstanding. It's the reason why New Mexico State they won 10 games. It was a reason why they had a chance to play for the Conference USA Championship. They weren't successful. Liberty just outmatched them with talent, and there was not much they could do there. But Diego Pavia had a phenomenal season, including a massive, massive win at Jordan-Hare Stadium where he took absolute command of the offense, and he just marched them up and down the field. He had moxie. He had a little bit of swagger. He body slammed the cornerback after throwing an interception. Just things that he brings to the table, inspires the rest of the guys. And that's why he has the Captain C on his chest. And that's why he's front and center. That's why he won the job. There's probably 3 or 4 physically better quarterbacks than he is. But it's the other stuff that won him the job. It's the other stuff that I think is going to lead Vandy to have a little bit of a resurrection. And when I say resurrection, I mean they were lucky to be 2-10 last year. They were absolutely abysmal. I think you're going to see a totally different team and a program that in a program that's going to start to understand that, hey, we can actually do this, and it's going to start with week one with Diego Pavia. You're going to see he's going to be the key piece of that. Then the defense, and Clark Lee calling the defense is going to be a key piece of that, Jerry Kill as well. But something interesting's happened over since the last scrimmage and over the course of the practices with the backup quarterback job. I think this quarterback room is phenomenal. This room is very, very talented. St. Hilaire and Muschamp are playing the role of Caleb Drones at practice this week, which I think you couldn't find two better people to play that role for Vandy's defense than those two. And those two are going to develop into some really, really nice quarterbacks. And I'm excited about what they bring to the table. But Drew Dicky was somebody early in camp that I wrote off, and I'm sure a lot of other people did too. I mean, he was struggling. He wasn't quite picking up the offense as good. He just wasn't as good as Nate Johnson physically. He wasn't making some of the big throws. Even Blaise Berlowitz was outplaying him. He just wasn't performing. He was just okay. He was middle of the road. He was solid. And when you're in a race with some talented guys, that's not going to be the case. But something clicked in his mind. And over the course of, I think it was either after the first scrimmage or it was like during the first scrimmage, somewhere right around that time frame, it seemed like he just started picking up things. He started making plays, started making really good throws down the field, really started kind of taking command of this offense a little bit. And there's some talk that he may have won the backup job. And this is interesting because, like, again, I wrote him off. I didn't think he had a chance. I thought he was good, and I thought he presented a good case in this whole race of where people. But I thought, okay, Nate Johnson has a big arm, fast, explosive, led the offense at Utah for a few games, and I think it was kind of a weird situation over there. But and then Blaise Berlowitz was also, kind of like Pavia. He knew the offense coming in. He kind of had that as an upper hand. But then Dicky just started performing, and he's a guy that's really surprised a lot of folks, and probably not the coaching staff, but he surprised a lot of folks in making this thing interesting. So it's good to the competition is still kind of raging on a little bit, but it's good to see that this quarterback room is in great shape because you have a lot of good players that understand the offense. I think this is something that is a really, really good development, because if something happens to Diego Pavia, I don't think there's going to be a massive drop off. I think I think there's going to be some packages designed for Nate Johnson based on what he can do, because he is far and away the fastest guy in that quarterback room. He has probably the biggest arm out of that group. But just mentally, he just couldn't stay on an even plane. He was peaking and he was peaks and valleys with his performances, and he had a really bad slump there in between scrimmage 1 and scrimmage 2, and it was a really bad slump, and that's where Drew Dicky made up some ground. He saw that Berlowitz was struggling a little bit, Nate Johnson was struggling a ton, and he saw an opportunity to kind of get himself in a position to where he could, in fact, be the backup quarterback. So it's good to have some quality depth there, because something happens to Pavia, you can hand the keys to Drew Dicky, and you're not completely screwed. Now, I think if something does happen to Pavia, and I think there's going to be a little bit of an element of a 2-quarterback system, but I think it would be probably more of a situational based 2-quarterback system with Dicky and Nate Johnson, if that were the case, if they were pressed into action, because you still want to maintain that quarterback run game, but I think you add an element of downfield passing with Dicky. I think you have a guy that can command the quick game, that can do a lot of different things there. So, but it's going to be interesting to kind of see what happens with that. And I'm very excited, man. This is, This is going to be fun. It's game week, guys. It's game week. So get ready. Virginia Tech's coming into town in a week, Saturday, really. So what, 6 days, 5 days? Man, this is exciting, man. I'm so excited I can't even do the math. So, but this offense, man, it's a work in progress. It's a work in progress. Pavia is still getting chemistry with these receivers. These receivers are still trying to figure themselves out. The offensive line is still trying to shake out. I think they've got some answers maybe. But pass protection is going to be something they got to work on. But their identity is going to be key here and how they develop it, because you have to have it in order to be successful and move the ball, because you have to know kind of who you are and try to design a game plan around, okay, we're not going to try to force feed a passing game that isn't there against a team that's returning 20 starters. Otherwise, it's a recipe for disaster. So control the ball, control the clock. We'll talk about how they're going to do that next. All right. Hey, Locked On Vandy fans, I want to take a moment to give you a heads up on a brand new mobile game that I think you're going to love as much as I do. Ultimate College Football Head Coach. In this amazing game and simulation, you get to step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your college football program to glory. Can you imagine actually being the head coach of Vandy or Kennesaw State or Georgia or Kentucky? Whatever the case might be. You go from recruiting players to hiring coaching staff to overseeing training camps and handling scholarships. You control every crucial detail of your program. It's all in your hands. Will you be able to handle the pressure? I think I could. And here's what I really love about the game. You are responsible for calling the offensive plays during the games. That's right up my alley. So your strategy will not only determine the success of your football season, but will shape the future and legacy of your program. Ultimate College Football Head Coach is completely free, has no ads, and is 100% playable offline. You can play on the go as you want and when you want to. And of course, we have a special offer for Locked On Vandy fans. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Make sure to take advantage of this perk, and it will get your team off to a strong start. So download the game. Just visit ultimate-cfb.com. That's ultimate-cfb.com, or look it up in the app stores. Ultimate College Football Head Coach. Begin your coaching legacy today. All right, college football is back, and it's here. And we had a really good weekend there with Georgia Tech. And it's not too late to catch up before the season kicks off. SEC, ACC, Big 10, Big 12. You can get it all from Locked On stable of college experts by subscribing to the Locked On College Football Podcast. Who has a chance to make the playoff? What teams will cause chaos in their new conferences? Everything you need to know all in one place. Be sure to follow and subscribe to the Locked On College Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And speaking of every day, thank you to the everydayers for making us your first listen. I appreciate you dearly. Make sure you check out Locked On SEC. Make that your second listen of the day. So we talked about the quarterback position. I think it's interesting that there's some things that are kind of shaking out that coming into camp we didn't know. That we didn't know was going to happen, that we didn't think was going to happen or anticipate that was going to happen. Drew Dicky was falling back in the pack. Like it was at one point we thought he was going to get passed over by the freshman. Well, not so fast, he says. And it is a situation to where he really just kind of played his way into a spot. So this is exciting, guys. It's game week. Did I remind you guys that? It's game week. Virginia Tech is coming to town. This is exciting stuff. We're here. We're finally here. When I took this thing over in December, it felt like I was never going to get to this point where I'm like, okay, it's time for football season. Well, here we are. It is time for football season. So, but the offense it's a work in progress. And we knew that coming in. We knew that, the rebuild was there. We knew what was happening. We knew that this team had a long way to go. After an abysmal season, it's kind of where we're at. So this offensive identity is going to hinge on ball control. It's going to hinge on controlling the clock. It's going to hinge on a lot of different things. And I think a strong run game is going to help. And I think, honestly, the reason why Nate Johnson still has a chance, and I think why Diego Pavia is also in the mix, is because their running ability and the fact that they just bring explosiveness to the run game, like with quarterback sweeps, zone read, power read, jet read, those things, downhill runs from the quarterback position, I think are things that give the quarterbacks, or not just the quarterbacks, but give the offense a spark. They give the offense, much needed identity, and it makes things difficult for the defense. So in doing so, you allow the offense to really just lean into its identity and really just kind of go. They're going to be able to control the clock. They're going to be able to stay on schedule, and they're going to be able to eat up field position as well. So in a situation to where as you're trying to develop things, that's important, because you still, like, just because you're developing a passing game doesn't mean that you have to go 3 and out all the time and just try to force feed the run. I think there's going to be a lot of things that you're able to build off of it, because it is a dynamic run game. I think there's a lot of layers to it. There's a lot of wrinkles to it. There's a lot of things you can do from the base run that make that base run dangerous. There's RPOs, there's play actions, there's formation looks that you can get into that present the defense with one idea, and you give them a totally different idea, or you give them a totally different play based on a tendency breaker. So there's a lot of creative things you can do with motions, shifts, formations, formation deception, things like that you can to give yourself an advantage with numbers. And that's something that this offense is going to have to try to do. They're going to have to try to, especially early on. But as they develop a passing game, as they develop these wide receivers and get a really true feel of who's going to be those guys, you have to. I don't want to say razzle dazzle, because that seems a little bit tricky. That seems a little bit desperate. But you do have to have a sense of, what do you, how are you going to trick the defense? How are you going to get them out of position? How are you going to freeze these linebackers? How are you going to keep them from loading 9 in the box and coming after you and saying, you better, pressing coverage and saying, hey, beat us. Well, having a run game that can strike you at different places, having RPOs that can hit short screens, things like that, just quick hitting things that get you on the edge and get you attacking the defense and downhill as quickly as you can. You put guys in conflict, and it's done. It's a wrap. And so you have to sit there and go, okay, well, if our identities control the clock, we got to get first downs. We got to, and punting is not a bad thing if you don't do it every single drive. Punting is not a bad thing. If you can move the ball a little bit, get a couple first downs, eat up some clock, and then punt, you put your defense in a good situation, because they're rested and they can help, and you can help them help you, because this defense is really, and we're going to talk about that soon, they're really going to be the identity of the team. And it's really going to be, especially early on, maybe later in the season, the offense can pitch in and help a little bit, but early on, it's going to be up to the offense to pick up the defense, and the defense is going to give the offense some chances, and hopefully with as disruptive as they can be, they can provide opportunity for this offense to get some really good field position and to get in some advantageous situations to where they can put points on the board, if not 3, 6. So this is going to be a very interesting way to start the season, because I don't, there are concerns there with this offense. How are they going to get into the run game? Are they going to be able to give Cedric Alexander and AJ Newberry and Monty Jones and those guys a lot of carries and be effective with it? I think they will be, because there's going to be a lot of different ways for them to get the carries. But again, is it going to be, how are you going to get to the edge? How are you going to get the ball out to these receivers. What are you doing to get the ball out there on the perimeter? How are you going to get the ball down the field? How are you going to get them to give you something at 15 to 20 yards down the field on the sideline? Like, how are you going to manipulate the defense? How are you going to get them in position? Well, again, situationally, I think putting some pressure on them, using tempo, things like that, I think will help as well. So you're going to see some interesting things, but I think motions, shifts, and things like that and you didn't see a ton of that last year with this offense. And so you're going to see a good bit of that this year, and you're going to get some deception, and I think you're going to ultimately get some points. So, but this defense, again, I think is going to be very disruptive. I think they're going to make some big plays. I think they're going to set this offense up in some really good situations this year, better than they ever thought of doing last year. We'll talk about how they're going to do that and what that's going to look like with Clark Lee now calling the plays next. All right. How about a little jolt of energy from 5 Hour Energy, right? Are you tired after lunch? Well, you know what? You're not alone. In fact, research shows that more than 70% of us hit the wall after lunch. I know I do. So let a 5 Hour Energy shot help you leap over that wall instead of crashing into it. So you can, with zero sugar, a convenient portable size is the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. The 5 Hour Energy website has flavors galore like watermelon, tropical burst, grape, berry, and more. There's a flavor for everyone. Try them all. On the site, you even have the option to build your own 12-pack or 24-pack. You can choose the flavors, and it's delivered right to your door. So you can get the cycle there. Watermelon, tropical burst. You can get a combination of any of those. So if you go to 5hourenergy.com, it is the number 5, hourenergy.com, and get some 5 Hour Energy product today. You can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB and receive $20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th and one order and cannot be used with any other promotions. This code is not good on subscription orders. So go to 5hourenergy.com today. That's the number 5, hourenergy.com. All right, welcome back. We are wrapping up the show here on the Locked On Vandy podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen each and every day. Make sure you follow us on social media. We are jacked up. The season is here. It is week 1. We have a great week lined up. We're gonna during the season, aside from this week, because we really didn't have much to react to, but it's going to be an overreaction Monday. We're going to talk about what, the good, the bad, and the ugly from the week before, from the game on Saturday, from the game on the previous Saturday. Then we're going to kind of take our lessons from that game and start to look ahead a little bit with reacting to Clark Lee's press conference and what did we learn from the game. Wednesday is going to be all about the matchups. Thursday, we're gonna cross it over, and Friday it's keys to the game, and we're gonna make some picks. Not just the Vandy game, but we're gonna make some other picks as well. We're gonna try to make you some money. So the weeks are gonna be good, and this is gonna be a fun ride for this season. So I hope you join me at Coach Burton 36 at Locked On Vandy, as well at Locked On Vandy on Instagram. My personal Instagram is at Coach Corey Burton on Instagram as well, if you want to follow that. So this is again, it's game week, guys, and this season has already gotten off to a great start. Georgia Tech rolls into Dublin, Ireland. Yeah, you heard that correctly. They roll into Dublin and beat Florida State. That's impressive, man. And that sets up some things for. You get the season off with an upset like that. Does that mean this is going to be an interesting season? Does that mean there's going to be a lot of that? A lot of parity with the transfer portal? It's possible, and Vandy got a lot of players out of the transfer portal, especially on defense, right? Their quarterback, I just talked about at the top of the show, got him out of the transfer portal. He could be the key piece to this whole thing, right? Vandy we could look up and go, Vandy's in a bowl game. Oh, it's because Diego Pavia balled out, right? Well, the other reason they could be in a bowl game is because this defense is ready to wreak havoc, right? And Vandy is going to – you could very well see Vandy go through a resurrection. And a resurrection, I don't know if the bowl game is like best case scenario, but I still think like winning 4 or 5 games, you could still call it kind of because of where they were last year, it is a bit of a resurrection. But this defense is going to be disruptive, man, and I'm excited for it. Because like this is going to be the true identity of the team, and this thing is looking like Clark Lee exactly what he wanted. He stepped in to be the defensive coordinator. He's ready for a new challenge. He's jacked up about how it's going to feel on game day. He's got to be extra attentive to the defense, but is also extra attentive to the game because I don't know, he's the head coach. So he's got to kind of know what's going on situationally. He's got to be able to communicate with the refs, all the good stuff. But him calling this defense, him being the defensive coordinator is going to be outstanding. It's going to be the best thing that's happened to this Vandy team, or one of the best things that's happened to this Vandy team besides Jerry Kill, because they're going to fly around. They're going to make plays. And I think that the turnover rate is going to be the biggest stat improvement for this defense, because they're going to take the ball away probably way more than they did last year. They're going to be disruptive. They're going to be you're going to look up and go, okay, this team's getting after it. And what I saw, and I'm going to compare this to Georgia Tech, okay, because I think that Vandy did something was similar defensively to Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech last year, I don't think they had the defense. They were one step away from just letting the opposing offense go against air, and probably would have had a better time at it, because they weren't very good last year. Neither were Vandy, and both made changes at defensive coordinator. Now Georgia Tech, albeit I think this is a good indication of what you could see out of Vandy. Not saying they're going to go in and beat Virginia Tech just yet, although I think they will. I think Vandy's defense is going to be very disruptive, very, very havoc centered, just like Georgia Tech's defense was this past weekend. Georgia Tech's defense, they gave up some big plays, and that's going to happen against Virginia Tech in this game coming up Saturday. It's going to happen, right? But there's also going to be some plays like on 3rd and long, they're going to get a key sack. On 2nd down, they're going to tackle for loss. They're going to punch the ball out. They're going to pick one off in the end zone. They're going to, it's going to be frustrating at times. You're going to pull your hair out, and then all of a sudden they're going to string together 2 or 3 great series, and it's going to set the offense up to be able to capitalize on that. And Georgia Tech was helped by a phenomenal offense, but that's something that we're not sure if Vandy has, because we just don't know what this offense is going to come out. Are they going to come out firing? Have they been holding back? Have they, do they finally have a plan together? Like, we just don't know what the offense is going to look like, but we do know that the defense is going to give the team some chances to put some points on the board. The defense is going to be, if you're a Virginia Tech fan, playing against this defense is going to be frustrating, because like, you're going to see some big play potential. You're going to see some things open up, but you can't quite get there, or you're going to see, your quarterback drop back and he's got a couple guys in his face and he can't follow through on a throw, and he's going to miss some throws because he hurried it, timing was off, or he's going to get hit. And then, quarterbacks, when they get hit, they get spooked a little bit. So this defense is going to fly around. And again, if you want to kind of see what an improved defense looks like, it's Georgia Tech's defense is like that. And they improved drastically over the course of from last season. They had a new guy, defensive coordinator. He has a plan. He has an identity, and he just flat gets after you, man. They're aggressive. That's what I love about their defense. They're aggressive, and I think Clark Lee is going to be the same way, because you have to be, right? For Georgia Tech to win that game, Tech's defense had to take chances, right? There was a 4th down play, a big 4th down play, where they blitz a safety, and Florida State ends up getting it first and goal from the 1 after a completion, because they blitzed the safety and couldn't get home on the blitz. But it just showed you, like, hey, they're throwing everything they can at the 10th ranked team and the number 10 ranked team in the country. And it worked because it shook DJ Ungulale. It shook that Florida State offense to doubt themselves. And that's what Vandy's got to do defensively. That's what's going to be the identity of this team. That's what's going to give this offense confidence that, hey, we need to step this thing up. And I think Pavia will feed off that. And I think this team will feed off that. And if it's a great home crowd, they will feed off of it. So I think if you watch this Georgia Tech game, as far as defensively, this is a great indicator of how that's going to go. Offensively, the Georgia Tech game was also a really good game to watch because shifts and motions and tendency breakers and things that Buster Faulkner and Georgia Tech did were outstanding as far as getting Florida State off balance, because Florida State has one of the best defenses in the country, but they were off balance all night and they couldn't seem to get right. So shifts and motions are a big part of that. The schemes weren't that complex. The looks, the motions, and the shifts made it complex and kept Florida State off balance, and that's why we're sitting here talking about Georgia Tech with an upset. So, but that's what we learned coming out of fall camp. Tomorrow, we're going to turn our focus towards the season. We're going to start looking at some matchups. What does Virginia Tech bring to the table? We'll talk about that tomorrow. But until then, have a great rest of your day. Behave yourselves. And, of course, anchor down.